So welcome, our remarkable, beloved, and visionary leader colleague, Michelle. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and all the work that you've done in community. And as always at SETC, we begin by acknowledging our creator and giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Michelle, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Victor, for having me on the show. I'm really excited and really honored that you reached out to me. So my name is Michelle Davis, CEO and founder of MVD Consulting Inc. We work with not-for-profit organizations and businesses to really help them deepen their work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We also help to lead research and evaluation. I have a long interesting winding road of how I got there, but I've been was a not-for-profit leader for many years in education, community health, community legal, as well as gender-based violence prevention sectors in Ontario. And I've worked across Canada and internationally, really around social justice causes, really amplifying and supporting communities to seek the justice that they so rightly and richly deserve.
That's incredible. The work that you've done with equity denied communities is incredible and important. It's vital in this season of deep polarization and this crisis in so many ways and in so many communities. So once again, I applaud your consistent leadership and commitment to community development. So my next question, what inspires you in your work right now? What has you curious or what's keeping you up at night?
Start off with a good one, Victor. Look at that. So there are so many things that inspire me as well as keep me up at night. So certainly what's going on in the macroeconomic sectors, issues, how they affect households that are much like mine with Black-led, Black families. So really understanding how, increased inflation, increased interest rates are really pushing many of us in different ways. So that has me concerned in terms of, coming on the heels of the pandemic, which so gravely impacted our families and communities. Now this situation is really pushing people to the edge and to the brink. And so how are we going to ensure that Black communities and Black households are able to recover? Right? So that's something that has me concerned as an individual, but also as a board director, as a volunteer, as a community member. But on the other hand, what inspires me is the hope that I see in so many ways every day, whether with the clients that I work with, the young people that I mentor, that I see in my son as he's looking, towards his future. So we're still filled with a lot of hope. And so that inspires me to keep going in the work that I'm doing, and really seeking that justice, right? Working in partnership and collaboration with others. We still believe very deeply that there is better on the other side. And so we continue to work. So that's some of the things that are inspiring me currently.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. So my next question, what challenges and barriers are you facing in your work? And what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
Mm. So I think there's been, for a lot of us who work in diversity, equity, inclusion, there's been an ongoing and deepening backlash in many sectors. We saw that with Professor Gay, who decided to resign as president of Harvard University, and that's had a lot of ripple effects for many of us who do this work. That hit really hard for me, seeing her mistreatment by the public, by alumni, by donors to the university, as well as by university administrators themselves. As someone who has been part-time faculty, I know by no means carried the weight that she carried, but I can understand teaching at the post-secondary level, for example, is very, very demanding. It's very exhausting. And to be treated in that way, it hit very hard for many of us who have worked in the academic sectors. So that's one thing. So we're grappling with how to unfreeze this freeze. that has happened where in some sectors, particularly in the US, there's kind of this retracting, stepping back from DEI, but often those are organizations that weren't really committed in the first place. They were very performative. They were just at the surface doing this work. But I'm able to really lean into my clients and my projects where people are fully committed. They are leaning into the work. And so that helps to counter some of those challenges that the wider sector across North America, let's say, is facing. And that while there are some who are stepping back there and retreating from the work, there are those who continue to push forward. And so I'm very much most interested in supporting those who continue to do the work and continue to push forward.
I couldn't agree more. When I saw that she resigned after navigating such a contentious topic and issue for so many weeks or months, it saddened me. It was very disheartening. And I think it hit a lot of folks that are doing any work in terms of justice, access, inclusion, diversity, decolonization, equity. Like social justice work is challenging, but when you see a leader of her pedigree and her the body of work that she comes with having to resign, it was definitely very disheartening. So once again, I appreciate you bringing that up, your candor and your authenticity. Yeah, so my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work?
Mm-hmm. So key priorities, I mean, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there are always a number of things that you're working on in terms of growing sales, growing revenue, increasing brand awareness, hiring more people, creating employment for others. But more specifically to DEI work, really, for example, one of the things that we're doing for 2024 is a series of webinars on various topics related to DEI. So on Tuesday, we had our first one on human resources, recruiting and retaining diverse people. And it was a great conversation. Had a guest speaker on who was incredibly knowledgeable, and people found a lot of value in that. So that the priority for us and for me as the head of my company is to continue to add value, continue to educate folks, particularly those who work with or lead smaller companies and smaller organizations who may not have an HR department, who may not have a DEI division, providing that value in information and education in these kinds of formats, such as these monthly webinar series. So we have another one planned on legal issues, a third on big data, data analytics tied to storytelling. So that's a priority for us in this quarter and for this year to continue to add that education, that information, and that value to our clients. Also continuing to show up for communities in particular ways, supporting folks as they try and navigate this new sort of kind of normal, where people are feeling really stretched, really pressured, where workforce has shifted in so many different ways, which makes it challenging for employees, but also for employers. So being able to kind of stand in that gap, hold space for people to think through these issues, to have these conversations, and really to find the supports that they need. So those are a couple of the priorities for us right now.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So my next question, how do you feel about the future of DEI in Canada? There's been a pushback in terms of ESG work and DEI work in the States, and it's creeping across Turtle Island. How do you feel about the future? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Are you hopeful?
I am very optimistic, but maybe that's because naturally I am very much a glass half full person. I do think that, or I do believe strongly that there are a lot of opportunities in front of us that we haven't yet realized in decolonization work, in solidarity driven movements. So, and I really believe in Canada, we're just scratching the surface of that work. I often say that I feel when it comes to DEI work in Canada, we're kind of like in kindergarten, whereas the neighbors to our south, they're kind of, senior year of high school, first year of college. The sector is much more developed, I feel, in the US in some regards. So we have this long runway where we can continue to build on our understanding, on our relationships, on our approaches and frameworks that make sense for us in Canada. How we address DEI will certainly look different and should look different from how DEI is addressed in other countries around the world. So I'm certainly very hopeful. There's still a lot of good momentum. There's still a lot of good commitment. And still a lot of good interest in deepening our diversity, equity, and inclusion work in organizations, workplaces, as individuals. So just continuing to every day just chip away at it, continue to move forward, because eventually we will get to where we want to go. It won't be easy, as we know. It hasn't been up to this point. It won't be easy going forward, but it's such important work.
I couldn't agree more. I know that some of the institutions and organizations that we speak of have such great power. And from when I was a young boy, my father taught me that power usually attracts the worst and corrupts the best. So with that knowledge of power, it's so important to have representation and diversity of thoughts and lived experience and social location. So once again, I just applaud you for your remarkable work and your consistent leadership. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
I'll just pick up with your comment you made about power. I think it's so important that we reframe and reframe power. So that power that corrupts, that power that is oppressive, to really look at power with how do we work together, and having that abundance mindset. There's more than enough for all of us, and not that zero-sum game that capitalist societies believe in. So if we reframe that notion of power, then we know that together we will go much further, right, than as individuals. And so reframing those notions will be important and allowing us to move forward much more quickly in a much more healthy, holistic way than I believe how we have traditionally approached a lot of this work. So yeah, if anyone is interested in learning more about my work, what I do, please reach out at mvdconsulting.ca. We'd be happy to chat.
mvdconsulting.ca. Fast alone or far together. Remarkable as always, Michelle. Thank you so much for all that you do for so many. And yeah, just investing this time with us today to share actual insights, wisdom, and clearly the vocation, the passion that comes behind your work. And as always at SETC, we close the way we began this conversation, this interview, by giving thanks to our creator, by acknowledging, giving thanks to the original stewards, the various lands we're on. We give thanks and acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Michelle. We so appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Victor. It was a wonderful conversation.